Welcome to the Brigham Young University Family History Library webinar series. My name is Braden Knutson. I'll be your host for this webinar today. We'd like to thank everyone for joining us for another webinar. As we get started here, we'd like to invite you to participate in the polls that we have down at the bottom of the screen. Especially let us know what topics you'd be interested in the coming months. That always is very helpful for us in planning out our webinars as we continue to go forward. So our next webinar after today will be on Thursday, October 12th at 5:30 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. And that webinar will be by James Tanner. And we hope you can come back and join us again for that one as well. Today we'll be pleased to hear from Kathryn Grant, who will be giving a presentation titled Getting Better Search Results with Wildcards. After years on the sidelines, Kathryn started doing family history and discovered a new passion. Her specialty is mentoring new family historians and helping them find success and maybe even avoid some of the mistakes she's made. Kathryn teaches Sunday classes at the BYU Family History Library. She also presents at Riverton Saturday seminars and other family history events. Her column on family history ran in the Nauvoo Times for about a year and is still available online. Kathryn works for the LDS Church as a technical writer with a focus on usability and process improvement. Besides family history, she loves uplifting music, thought-provoking books, and homemade guacamole. And as we get things turned over to Kathryn, I'd like to remind you about the question box on the right-hand side of the screen. Feel free to write in with any questions you might have, and we'll get those answered by the end of the presentation. And whenever you're ready, Kathryn, you can go ahead and take it away.
Sounds great. Thank you, Braden. And welcome, everybody. It's so good to have you with us today for our webinar on getting better search results with wildcards. At the outset, I just wanted to say that this will be a pretty short webinar compared to some of the others, and it's also very basic. So we're not going to get into super advanced or complicated uses of wildcards. If you are wondering how to use wildcards or have very little familiarity with them, then this webinar may be helpful to you. So let's take a look at what we're going to be covering today in our webinar. First of all, what is a wildcard? And secondly, why are they useful? We're going to go over some simple examples, and then we'll look at how wildcards are used on several of the popular genealogy sites. And finally, we'll talk about using wildcards on Google, since many of us have found that Google is a great tool for doing family history. So let's go ahead and dive in. What is a wildcard? Very simply, a wildcard is a character that stands for unknown characters when you're doing a search. So for example, you see on the screen, one of my family names is Bescaby, but as you can imagine, it's spelled many different ways. And so when I'm doing a search, I don't necessarily know how that name is going to appear on an historical record that I'm looking for. And so in this example, the second character is unknown. It could be any one of those three, an E, an I, or an A. Well, a wild card helps me get beyond that limitation of my not knowing what's going to be on the record. And the most common wild cards are, first of all, a question mark, which represents exactly one character, not more, not less, and an asterisk, which can represent 0 to multiple characters. So you might be asking yourself, why are wildcards useful, especially since most genealogy sites and Google do really great at fuzzy searching. So for instance, on FamilySearch, I can enter the name Elizabeth, and I'm very likely to also get, well, I'll get Elizabeth with an S, Elizabeth with a Z, I'll get Lizzie, Betsy, Beth, and so forth, different variations on that name. So if sites are so good at fuzzy searching, then why do we need wildcards? Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. One is that wildcards give you more control over your search results. Wildcards can help you find records that not only have name variations, but also spelling mistakes. How many of you have ever found an indexed record that was spelled incorrectly? I bet probably all of us have. And so wildcards can help put the records that you want near the top of the search results. So let's look at some examples. In addition to those three that I showed on just the previous or one of the earlier slides, the surname Bescaby can be spelled any of these ways that you see on the screen, and actually quite a few more, but this is enough for the sake of example. So if I am looking for historical records with this Bescaby surname, how can I use wildcards to help me get better results? So as a reminder, the question mark is exactly one character and the asterisk is 0 to multiple. So let's look at some actual examples. I've noticed also that this particular name, the spelling variations tend to be regional, and maybe you've found that in your family too. So there might be a region of the country where I'm likely to find either a C after the BES or a K after the BES. Well, if I put a question mark in my search term, if I put BES question mark OBY, then it's going to find both of those. And just in case you're wondering if the question mark has to be any special thing, it's not. It's just a regular question mark on your keyboard. So let's look at another example of using that exactly one character wildcard. Sometimes the vowel after the C is an O, and sometimes it's an A. So if I want to do a targeted search for both those possibilities, then I would put BESC question mark BY, and it would find both of those. So those are examples of using exactly one character wildcard. And here's an example of using the asterisk, which can stand for 0 to multiple characters. So you notice here that I've searched for BES asterisk BY. I'm essentially telling the search engine that I want everything that starts with BES followed by whatever. It could be 0 or multiple characters, and then finally it has to end in a BY. So you notice the first example there, it found BES with nothing between BES and the BY. And then it found several that had two letters between the BES and the BY. And then finally, that last example, it found one that had three letters between the BES and the BY. So here's an example of compensating for spelling mistakes using or misindexings using wildcards. So these are actual misindexings that I found on Ancestry with of the Bescaby name. And here's how I could use wildcards to find those. So if I put BES asterisk BY, then it's going to find that misspelling that uses the two letters between the BES and the BY. That's a fairly narrow search. If I want to broaden it out a little bit, I can take out the S. So now I'm asking the search engine to find anything that starts with BE with whatever in the middle and ending with BY. And you notice that then it picked up another misspelling. So now it's getting both of these. Finally, I can make it more broad by just starting with the letter B and then putting an asterisk for whatever in the middle and then ending it with BY. And you notice that that search found all three of those misspellings. It's probably worth commenting at this point that a rule of searching is that the more specific you are, the better results you get, but the fewer you get, and it is possible that you'll miss results that you're looking for. On the other hand, if you make a broader search, you're going to get more results, but you're probably going to get additional results that you actually aren't interested in. So it's kind of a balancing act. And what I'll usually do is try one, and if that doesn't work, I'll try the other. And it's also worth adding that the promptings of the Spirit can be really helpful when you're doing these kinds of searches. When we pray for that guidance from the Holy Ghost can help us know even something as specific as how to use a wildcard to find a family name. Okay, those are the only examples we're going to cover today. Those are pretty basic, but they actually do work well in, I would say, probably most cases. So let's talk a little bit about how wildcards are supported on popular websites. Wildcards are supported on FamilySearch Historical Records, on Ancestry.com, Find My Past, and Google. Now, interestingly enough, it's worth mentioning that wildcards are not currently supported in FamilySearch Family Tree or MyHeritage. It's probably worth mentioning right now what the difference is between FamilySearch historical records and FamilySearch family tree, because I've noticed that that's a point of confusion a lot of times for people. So just by way of explanation, FamilySearch or FamilySearch.org is the entire website. It has different sections. So FamilySearch historical records on the FamilySearch website, you access that by clicking the search button. If you can envision with me the menu on FamilySearch.org, at the very top, you've got some different options, and one of them is search. Well, search takes you to historical records, which have records about deceased people. So that's going to have census records, birth, marriage, death, military, and so forth. On the other hand, Family Tree is that portion of the website that allows us to manage temple work. So that is where we're building the common pedigree and finding out what temple work has been done. And that's also where we can add people who need their temple work to be done. And you can attach historical records to the people in Family Tree. But FamilySearch historical records and FamilySearch family tree are actually two completely separate areas of the website. So if you're working in Family Tree in the place where you're managing temple work, you can't currently use wildcards there, but hopefully that will change in the future. We'll see what happens. We'll keep our eyes open for announcements from FamilySearch, right? And then MyHeritage, from what I read online, MyHeritage doesn't support wildcards because they've got really good fuzzy searching. And fuzzy searching is wonderful and it's very helpful. But as we mentioned before, if sometimes the fuzzy search is not going to find things that you're looking for, particularly spelling mistakes. And that's when wildcards can come in very handy, regardless of how good the fuzzy search is. So let's go through these sites just briefly, one by one, to talk about the little variations in the way that they support wildcards. So FamilySearch Historical Records supports the common wildcards of a question mark being exactly one character and the asterisk being 0 to multiple. It's got a few little other rules that it's helpful to be aware of. And I should add there, I wouldn't worry about necessarily memorizing these rules. You can't really break anything by doing wildcard searches, and often I will just experiment to find out what I can and cannot do. But according to FamilySearch, these are the rules that apply when you're doing wildcard searches. You do need to use at least one non-wildcard character, and that actually makes sense if you think about it. Suppose that I was searching for my ancestor John Bescaby, and I put John in the first name field, but in the last name field I just put an asterisk. Well, what that's telling the system is give me every single last name of somebody who has a first name of John, which is totally not what I wanted because I'm trying to search for Bescabies. And so, in fact, very rarely are you going to use just one non-wildcard character. Usually you'll use more like we saw in those examples. Like in Bescabie, I would do BES star BY. I wouldn't even usually use just two characters but at least you know that you can use just one. And the time, honestly, that I found that helpful is when in those unusual circumstances where a last name might have only two or three letters. And so in that case, it's you probably would just use maybe one or two non-wildcard characters and then use a wildcard. In Family Search of historical records, wildcards are okay at the beginning and or end of a word. So for an example, one time I found that Bescabie had been misindexed as Prescabie, Pres, so forth. So in that case, searching with B and then followed by a wildcard was not going to bring that up. However, putting a wildcard at the beginning and then having the rest of the word EESCOBY would bring that misspelling up. So FamilySearch allows you to put a wildcard at the beginning, at the end, or both, and not all websites allow that. And wildcards are okay on FamilySearch historical records in name and place fields, but every time I've tried them in another field, such as a date field or a batch number field, I've gotten an error. So keep that in mind. I haven't seen actually any documentation on this. This is just from my personal exploration. But again, I found that they will always work in name and place fields, but I haven't found them to work in any other field. There might be an exception. If there is, I don't know what it is. So how do you find information about how wildcards are used in FamilySearch historical records? The best way is to search the knowledge base. And the way that you do that, you probably recognize this little menu up here. It's the menu that appears on pretty much any FamilySearch page in the upper right-hand corner, Messages, Volunteer, and Get Help. If you click Help, or Get Help, you get this drop-down menu, and it has a search that will search the Help Center. So if you put wildcard in here and then just click the search button, it will bring up a list of matching articles in the Help Center. And then, of course, you can click the title to see that help article. I have to mention, now that I've said all that, which is kind of hilarious, the article is out of date right now. I don't think it's been updated since about 2016. And so I'm going to actually submit a request to have that updated. But as for right now, the restrictions on searching in there are not accurate. It says that you can only search in the first level of a geographic place, which is not true. And I think it says, if I remember right, that you have to have 3 non-wildcard characters. But I actually verified with the product manager in charge of search, and he said that one is, you can use as few as one. So the information that you got in the webinar today is the most up-to-date web information as of today. Ancestry.com also supports wildcards. It does the same standard wildcards, a question mark and an asterisk, but according to Ancestry's documentation, the asterisk can only stand for 0 to 5 characters, not 0 to whatever. So, and again, this one I actually haven't tested to see if the documentation was accurate, so I'm just reporting what Ancestry documentation said. If you wanted to, you could experiment with that and see if that's actually accurate on Ancestry. Other rules that Ancestry has is they require you to use at least 2 non-wildcard characters. And I did test that this morning and found that to be accurate when I was doing Ancestry searches. And then for Ancestry, you can use a wildcard at the beginning or end of the word, but not both. So you see this example right here, this star ESCOB star would work in FamilySearch historical records, and I actually tried it and it did, but it doesn't work on Ancestry. And a final restriction on Ancestry is that you can't use wildcards with a Soundex search. And for those of you who might be wondering what a Soundex search is, in Ancestry, you notice that when you have a search form and you click the exact check mark here, you get this little drop down, and one of the options is Soundex, which is a type of phonetic searching. So if you click that Soundex box, then you cannot use wildcards at the same time on Ancestry. How do you find Ancestry's documentation on wildcards? The easiest way is to click their Help menu, which appears on pretty much the top of any Ancestry page, and then you get this drop down, and so you click Support Center. And when you click that, you get a search function and you enter wildcard, click search, and you get a page very much like, or you get a list of search results, I should say, very much like the FamilySearch search results. It's a list of articles that have information about wildcards. And then you just click the name of the article to see that article. Find My Past also supports the question mark and the asterisk. I looked every place that I could think of for rules for Find My Past and could not discover any rules other than the fact that they support these 2 wildcards. So, and I actually tried searching on the site and didn't even find any wildcard information searching directly on Find My Past. So I went to good old Google and I searched Find My Past wildcards and came up with these relevant results about how Find My Past uses wildcards. So if you want information on wildcards in Find My Past, this is a way to find it. Finally, speaking of Google, let's talk about how Google uses wildcards. Interestingly enough, their asterisk stands for one or more words. It doesn't stand for a portion of a word. Other rules are that single character wildcards, such as the question mark, are not supported, and also the asterisk cannot be used within a word. So you can't use it to stand for part of a word, it has to stand for one or more words. So let's look at a couple of examples. In Google, I was searching for my ancestor John Bescabee, and I wanted to pick up any middle name or middle initial. So I used an asterisk and look at the results that it got me. It got me John George Bescabee, John Henry, John M, John E, and so forth. So if you want to cover all, this is an example of if you want to cover all the possibilities for middle names, and sometimes in England people had two middle names, or in any country they could have two middle names. Searching with this John asterisk Bescabee would bring up all those possibilities. Now, here's an example of how what works on pretty much any other genealogy site doesn't work when you're searching on Google. Notice that when I searched for BES asterisk BY, it treated BESC as a separate word in front of whatever. And so I didn't actually see anything to do with Bescabee on this page. It's all about the Bioenergy Science Center, which to my knowledge, no Bescabees have ever been involved in. And so just be aware that the asterisk will be treated as a word, not as an unknown part of. So that actually brings us to our summary. Let's look at what we talked about in this brief webinar. Wildcards can help you get better search results. They may be used slightly differently on different websites, and sites will usually explain their rules about wildcards if you have any questions. And then again, as I mentioned, you really can't break anything by doing wildcards. The worst that can happen is that you might try something and it doesn't work, and then you've learned something. So happy searching with wildcards. Braden, do we have any questions?
We don't have any questions at the moment, so if you have anything else, that you can go ahead.
That is it for today for me.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the wonderful webinar, and if there are any questions, feel free to continue to type those into the question box. That's still available as we go through our closing. Knowing how to use these cool tricks is great for searching in any field, not just for family history. But family history is probably a really good one to know these tricks for because of the variances that come with names and everything. So that's really good. Well, thank you very much, Kathryn.
Thank you.
Um, so I would like to invite you to give us some feedback on today's webinar. Let us know how we can continue to make our webinar program better. And we hope to see you next time. Thank you very much.